I'm Vinny Politan. Great to have you with us tonight here on Closing Arguments. And through my 2 decades of covering the nation's biggest trials, there are certain days, certain witnesses, certain moments that I remember forever. The really big ones. Tomorrow is one of those days. Big breaking news this afternoon. Johnny Depp scheduled to take the stand tomorrow in Fairfax County, Virginia. Our cameras, our microphones inside the courtroom. You'll see and hear all of the testimony. Then, of course, tomorrow night we'll have all the big moments for you. Big, big headline today. We're going to bring in Chanley Painter to talk about it in just a little bit. But I wanted to start tonight talking about what happened during the COVID lockdown, COVID shutdown, when people were locked in their houses and weren't having interaction with people from the outside. Something that we noticed here on the show was this incredible rise in the amount of domestic violence around the country. We saw the numbers, we covered the stories. It was heartbreaking, absolutely heartbreaking, whether it's spouses, children, whoever, isolated from the rest of the world. So there isn't that interaction with teachers and coworkers and friends and family. So behind closed doors, domestic violence was literally exploding around America. Extremely tragic and so dangerous. So extremely dangerous. And it wasn't relegated to any particular type of person. It was across the board. It doesn't matter if you're super rich and you got all the money in the world. That's not protection from domestic violence. Not at all. It happens everywhere. Now, let's get back to Fairfax County, Virginia, and what this case ultimately is about and what the jury has to figure out about the truth. Amber Heard has accused Johnny Depp of domestic violence. She did it years ago. She wrote an op-ed talking about being, a spokesperson, a representative of domestic violence and being a survivor. And before that, she actually did accuse Johnny Depp, filed the complaint. There was a protective order. It was ultimately dismissed. It was taken back and didn't go forward as they settled their divorce. But make no mistakes, we heard in the opening statements. Amber Heard has accused Johnny Depp of domestic violence. Now, on the other side of the courtroom, Johnny Depp has accused Amber Heard of domestic violence as well. And really the biggest outburst or incident that there's been a lot of focus on is when Johnny Depp severed his finger. And allegations, we heard in the opening statements, allegations that it was Amber Heard who was responsible, throwing that vodka bottle at Johnny and severing his finger. So you've got him accusing her of domestic violence. She's accusing him of domestic violence. Ultimately, yes, it's a defamation case, but it will be up to the jury to figure out the truth in all of this. What was going on behind closed doors? Sometimes it's difficult to figure out. And when you're like Johnny Depp, and you've got penthouses, and you've got an ability to be shielded from other people. And you know how when two people together that aren't right for each other, things get volatile, something happened. And there's enough here to clearly see that something did happen, but exactly what did happen will be up to the jury to figure out. But as I said, Johnny Depp taking the stand tomorrow will give them an opportunity to hear his version firsthand. Now, to set the foundation for his testimony and the incident involving the finger, we've heard some testimony about that already from other witnesses. So the jury goes into that, hearing from the lawyers and then hearing from the witnesses, and then tomorrow they'll hear from Johnny Depp. But first, let's listen to what they've heard already.
In March 2015, you traveled down to Australia to attend to Mr. Depp, is that right?
Yes.
After you attended to Mr. Depp and before you went to the hospital with him, did you go inside the house?
I went into the home to see the home. I went in to instruct one of the people with him to look for the tip of the finger, hoping that we would be able to put it back.
Was the tip of the finger found?
It was found.
Who found it?
I believe this man was their chef.
And do you know where he found it or where he told you he found it?
He said he found it in the kitchen area.
No, there was a text message where you got a text message from Mr. Depp.
Yes.
And he said he cut his finger, correct?
I think that's what it said, yes.
Okay. And the reference from the emergency room said that Mr. Depp had sliced his finger with a knife, correct?
Yes, that's what he told, because I was present for that. That's what he told the emergency room doctor.
Do you recall going to Mr. Depp's house after learning that he had cut his finger?
Yes.
What do you recall about that?
That we went to the house and I don't even think I went in at first. Dr. Kipper went in and he had cut his finger and we took him to the emergency room.
Do you have any understanding as to how Mr. Depp cut his finger?
I heard different stories from people.
What were the different stories you heard?
I had heard that Amber threw a bottle of vodka at him. I had heard that he slammed it with a phone.
Still got to figure out the truth. We'll hear what Johnny Depp has to say as he describes that moment. But right now, let's bring in Court TV legal correspondent Chanley Painter, live from Fairfax County tonight. Great to see you, Chanley. Let's start with the big headline. Johnny Depp on the stand tomorrow?
That's right, Vinny. We're expecting him late morning. Of course, his private security, his bodyguard, Sean Bett, under cross-examination first thing in the morning when this trial gets underway. We're also expecting to hear from his sound engineer of many years to take the stand for him, and then Johnny Depp himself. And as we previously discussed, Vinny, he should be on the stand for a while. The rest of the day, probably cross-examination into Wednesday. So this will be a huge moment for his case.
Absolutely. I'm thinking about, him on the stand and how he presents himself. From everything that we've heard so far on those audio tapes, seems reserved, seems very thoughtful at times, but this is going to be very emotional. I mean, he's got to go through the whole relationship and everything else. His story, though, when it comes to this finger, what is the Johnny Depp version of how his finger ended up severed?
Well, this occurred in Australia in 2015, about a month after he married Amber Heard. We've heard a lot of testimony, of course, over the last several days about their time in Australia. According to Johnny Depp, his version of events is that Amber Heard threw a vodka bottle at him during a fight in the couple, and that severed his finger. He is right there in the cast, recovering from that finger. And so he paints it as though she's the one who started this fight and the one that was attacking him. Now, as you can imagine, Amber Heard's version is quite different. We heard in opening statements that she anticipates in her testimony, in her case, when it starts, Vinny, that she was held hostage for 3 days while Johnny Depp was on a 3-day blackout with drugs and alcohol, and that he physically abused her, he sexually abused her, and that he cut his own finger. And that's what severed it. And we heard testimony from the doctor today that he had told the ER doctor when he was taken to the emergency room that he did cut his own finger. But again, his story is that he was just covering up for the fact that his wife allegedly had thrown this bottle at him and destroyed his finger.
So of all the incidents and these attacks, one way or the other, depending upon your perspective on all this, it seems the most volatile situation was down in Australia.
a lot of the testimony has revolved around what happened in Australia. It definitely is the most damage, quote unquote, damage to Johnny Depp that had occurred in any of the alleged abuse or allegations back and forth. His bodyguard today showed some photos to the jury of injuries that they say were caused to Johnny Depp by Amber Heard, and you see some of the red marks and some of the swelling, but a severed finger, that was the most extreme injury. So I think that's why we're hearing so much about what happened. And of course, according to her, it was a 3-day ordeal, one of the longest lasting ordeals. And remember, only about a month or so after the two were married. We also hear the name Marilyn Manson thrown in there a lot while in Australia. So again, Johnny Depp will give his side of the story, what happened when he takes the stand. And of course, Amber has a very different story.
Absolutely. All right, Chanley Painter staying with us. Let's bring in our other guests with us tonight in Los Angeles, California. Forensic psychologist, criminologist, Dr. Nadim Karim is with us. Also in LA, California law attorney, TikTok lawyer, Lamar Mojdahizad. Got it, right? Did I get it?
Perfect.
Excellent. Also with, and you can also check her out on TikTok at Lawyer Lamar, L-I-M-O-R. And in Atlanta, Georgia, trial attorney, family law attorney, law professor, Randy Kessler with us. So, all right, we got the A-listers here tonight. Doctor, I'll begin with you. This severed finger situation, two completely different versions of what happened. But to me, this signifies this was an extremely volatile relationship. You've got, on the one hand, describing a 3-day blackout where she's held hostage in Australia, and then you've got him with a severed finger in Australia. This was bad.
Absolutely, it's bad. It's egregious. And the bottom line is, now that Johnny's going to be taking the stand, his ability to really convince the jury that it wasn't a fact of self-inflicted injury, but it was in fact an injury that happened at the hands of Amber Heard, is going to be paramount. And my position is, and from a clinical perspective, how is Johnny going to convince them? And one of the things that I've learned over like the 7,500 cases that I've worked on, perhaps testified on a couple of hundred of those, Vinny, is his body language. I mean, look how he looks right now. His hair is tied back. He's got glasses on. They basically have listened to your show from Friday evening and said, hey, Johnny, let's clean this up and let's present in a way where you're actually believable. And one of the things that I do is I turn my chair to the jury and I make eye contact with them, unless it's a yes or no answer. And I use the opportunity to educate them on my opinion. They may not agree ultimately, but I'm not trying to be convincing and throw my ego into the mix. I'm just saying, hey, this is my clinical opinion. I am credible, I'm the expert, and this is why you should believe me. And for Johnny, he's gonna come forward with all of his acting prowess and his talent to make that connection with the jury, Vinny, and really be able to not sell them, but tell them the truth in his own words, that this injury was not self-inflicted.
Lamar, I know you're in the middle of Hollywood with all these stars, but this is a rare moment when you have someone of this stature in Hollywood going into a courtroom and talking about the most personal details of his life. How do you expect Johnny Depp to be on the stand when he's got to tell his version, his story of what happened?
It's an unbelievable story, and I think that Johnny is going to tap into possibly his acting skills and exactly what the doctor was saying, his ability to show the jury that he's going to be emotional. Things that have occurred, they are the truth. He's been pulling his attorney's chair out for her to take a seat during the trial. He knows the jury is watching. He knows people at home are watching. He knows the cameras are on him.
Wait, Lamar, are you saying that he's putting, are you saying he's putting on an act? That he is going to put on a show, that he's not going to get up there and tell the truth?
I think that he's going to tell the truth in a performative way, in a very storytelling way, chronological order. He's going to be on point. I believe he's going to be honest, and I don't think that the law and facts are on his side. So that honesty, I don't think is going to win the case for him. But again, we're dealing with a jury, so how much does that even matter?
Randy Kessler, this is a bitter battle. How do you explain to folks who are watching at home tonight that you've got two different versions on how a finger gets severed?
Boy, what you do with other witnesses, right? This other witness, the doctor, he didn't report that she did it to him when the doctor didn't have any notes about that. There was no blood on the bottle that apparently severed the finger. You have to use the other evidence because you've got two people that are fully capable of telling a story that's believable.
Well, let me ask you this. Let me ask you this, Randy, because they're both actors, right? But Johnny Depp's Johnny Depp. I mean, he's been in the spotlight for 4 decades. Does he have an advantage in front of a jury, regardless of who it is? Looks like it's a bunch of young men, by the way. But does he have a built-in advantage in selling his version of what happened here?
I'm not so sure because, you know, people have reputations. He's a reputation as a great actor. I think they may discount his testimony. They may say, was he telling the truth or was that an act? You know, a normal person, you believe them, but he's good at acting. I think they might bend over backwards to dig and to be suspicious of his testimony. So he's got that maybe even backfiring against him. It's going to be hard. He's got to be authentic. And if he does anything that looks like an actor, anything that looks too smooth, too calculated, too prepared, it may well backfire. They may not believe anything else he says.
Doctor, I expect him to be charming on the stand. That's the way he's been described. He's all, you know, when you are in that position for 4 decades, you kind of get used to people looking at you and judging you in every moment. And I think he understands that. Does it come across as genuine? Will there be any indicators that he's putting on a show? Is there a way to read between the lines with this guy?
I think it depends on the jury's interpretation of his charisma, Vinny. And what I mean by that is he could come across as Kentucky bluegrass smooth.
Not with that accent. Well, that's not a Kentucky. I've been to Kentucky. They don't talk like that in Kentucky.
Well, just that charming old school kind of, I'm just a simple guy. This is my story. This is why you should believe me. Forget about the Hollywood. Forget about the music. Forget about it all. I lost my finger and this woman damaged not only my reputation, but basically took a piece of my body. So in that context, his ability to be charismatic in a storytelling role, in his truth, could be convincing as far as his charisma. The flip side of that is what our learned friend just discussed in terms of the jury just seeing through it and saying, yeah, he's just playing a role here. It's almost like he's on the stand playing a defendant in a trial, trying to convince us of believing his side. Oh, and let's not forget, there's $50 million involved here. Doesn't need the money, but the fact is, he's going to want to clean his reputation so he can land the next big payday.
That's what it's all about. It's all about what he's saying tomorrow. Lamar, we only have about 10 seconds left in this segment, but your thoughts about his real audience in the courtroom, at least, is like a bunch of 20-year-old men. What do you think about that?
They love him. They love Johnny Depp. The audience loves him. The jury loves him. The courtroom loves him.
All right. They're staying with us the whole hour tonight. Dr. Nadim Karim, Lamar Mojdahizad, and Randy Kessler. When we come back, Johnny Depp testified once already over in the UK. Of course, we've got someone who was there, saw it all. He's going to tell us what it was like, what we should expect tomorrow when we return.